Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Robin Morris. I'm convener of the Oxford Energy Network, and this is our final seminar for the term. And just as a bit of context in terms of what's happening at the moment, we know that the high electricity and gas prices are mentioned in the news quite frequently at the moment. And the recent Office for National Statistics survey had told us that more than half of households have taken steps to reduce their energy use as a result of that. I think whilst everyone fears high energy prices, one of the things that it does trigger is a realization that long-term efforts to reduce energy demand pay back more quickly in times of high energy. So perhaps that's one small silver line that we should be thinking of. And we heard earlier this year from Gavin Killip about supply chains for retrofit. But as a context for Yekatherina's talk, I wanted to just highlight a cluster of public events that are taking place over the next couple of weeks into the end of June. Tomorrow evening, Nick Eyre from the Energy Group will be joined by Barbara Hammond and others in an event organised by the Oxford Friends of the Earth, which is about energy prices, climate crisis, what can we do? In other words, this confluence of reducing energy for both saving money but also reducing the impact on the climate. That starts at 6:30 p.m. in the Wesley Memorial Hall in central Oxford. And for the people who are interested, I have a QR code here as well that they could scan if they want to go along. And then that's followed by a series of openings of energy-saving homes in Oxford from the 18th to the 29th of June. And that's people showing small and large things that they've done, from a heat pump to putting in thermal control measures in their house. And there'll be a Oxford Town Hall on Sunday, the 26th of June, which will be an energy fair. We're also pleased to be joined by both Chris Church, who I mentioned, and Nick Eyre as well here. So please take a look at the Green Open Homes website for details of those events. So these are all examples of local practical actions, and they play a really important role in reducing barriers to retrofit among homeowners. But in today's seminar, Yekatherina will be moving beyond this because she looks at the temporal dynamics of actually how these things get to happen. Yekatherina is Research Associate in Energy Demand Reduction Policy, and you have a doctorate in Social Science and System Dynamics from UCL, I understand, and you joined the ECI in 2021 and part of CREDS programme.
Absolutely, correct.
Right, before I stumble over my words anymore, we'll start sharing slides and ask Yekatherina to start her talk. Thank you, Yekatherina.
Thank you. So thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and present you my work on domestic energy retrofit. As mentioned, I focus particularly on motivation, homeowner motivation, knowledge, and involvement. I was already introduced. I'm a researcher here, and that's our new building we're going to be moving in shortly. And as mentioned, there are a tradition on research and retrofit in ECI, and the projects include, not limited to CREDS, Retrofit for the Future, Building Expertise, Energy Super Hub, Oxford, Local Energy Oxfordshire, and people who work on energy retrofit or has a big portfolio and work on energy retrofit include Marina, Gavin, and Tina here is today in the audience. Robin already mentioned, the background for the need for such research, but just to quickly reiterate it, we need to meet our carbon targets, and energy use at home is 1/3 of the total energy UK use, and 70% of the housing stock is owner occupied. So it is important to focus on encouraging homeowner retrofits. Again, there is a broader picture. There are builder skills, there are challenges in supply chain, financial mechanisms, many others. I am focusing on homeowner journeys. So let me quickly explain you what are the existing approaches and what the alternative I'm offering. So the existing approaches to understand homeowners' decisions is focus identification of drivers and barriers in order to strengthen the former and reduce the latter. However useful this just the position is, it doesn't allow you to understand the temporal sequence of various influences. So I use the process perspective on retrofit journeys, and we'll see it later. Also, there is a focus on cognitive reasoning behind retrofit decisions, and I will show you the importance of including an emotional reasoning as well. Quickly to tell you what was the data collection. It was primarily case studies. Primary data collection for the case studies was interviews, but not only. I had case studies, have 18 case studies that were visible from the literature, but also collected case studies myself, including case studies with people from a superhomes network that achieved significant reductions in carbon reduction as a result of retrofit activities. And the results of this study is already published in 2 papers, one from the literature review, one from empirical work, and another set of results has been presented last week at the ECEEE conference, and the consolidation of the paper is in process. So I will present the results in I disaggregated them in 4 areas. Retrofit is a process, information sources, homeowner capacity for retrofit, and home meanings. And I'll walk you through them one by one. So retrofit is a process. As I said, I focus on, I say that, retrofit takes lengthy time period over which renovation decisions are formed and strengthened. So we need to understand it as a process, and there might be some benefits to it rather than just drivers and barriers. So here we have pre-retrofit stage, post-retrofit stage, very simple differentiation of the process. It will get a bit complicated after that. And I have take a socio-technical approach. Simplistically, socio-technical approach uses both social and technical aspect to understand the outcome in energy retrofit. It has 2 implications: the level of retrofit depth and the energy use in buildings. So here and the socio-technical perspective doesn't attribute it to either technical or social, but a combination of both. Obviously, energy use of building will depend on the physical structure of the house, but also in the household energy practices. And level of retrofit depth does not only depend on physical characteristics of the house or technology available on the market, but also other social or more social constraints. And what we have here is what process perspective offers us is differentiated between what I called proximate and ultimate influence. Proximate meaning that the influence are very close in time to the outcome, and ultimate meaning that they are further removed from the outcome. And not more than that. Ultimate doesn't mean that it's more important, but more removed and probably has bigger lever. So, for instance, energy use in retrofit. It's possible at the time when the building already is built. You can one could deliver information on how to operate the building. Fair enough, and PAS 2035 document asks for such things. However, during my case studies, I saw that homeowners who engaged in heavily engaged in retrofit were more likely to engage in active reduction in energy use post-retrofit. I call it here capacity, and we'll talk about that later as well. But to give you an example from the literature I saw, for instance, in one of the case studies in the literature, the homeowners in Australia, they did retrofit and they installed air conditioning, but because they, involved in these decisions and thinking about that, after the retrofit, they actually were using passive ventilation strategy, even though the capacity for air cooling was installed. That's because they already, built an ownership of this idea. So regarding the level of retrofit, and the opposite can be observed if the people are not involved. So in the literatures, in one of the cases in Denmark, the retrofit to high standards was done as a experimental project for portfolio building for a company who selected a family and did the retrofit for them. They did not consult them on what they're going to install, just on the color of the finishes. They pay for the retrofit themselves. So the owners retrospectively, after the retrofit was finished, switched off the ventilation system, thinking it consumes a lot of energy. So, involving people in the process is important. It's not just money. So, okay, regarding level of retrofit depth, retrofit coordinator could help. Retrofit is a complex process, and a lot of interconnections should be considered in order not to compromise the quality of construction or the quality of indoor air quality or other interdependencies. So, and for many reasons, coordinator is a good person to have. And indeed, I have here somewhere from Scandinavia an example of a one-stop shop approach where the coordinator helped the owners to push what they envision to achieve further. So the coordinator can help push the intentions further than originally planned for the homeowners. However, if a person is not available, such person is not available, and people don't have the knowledge of such technology, it's possible that the mismatch of information available in the building industry will deter them from proceeding with retrofit. Another example from the literature, there was homeowners who wanted to retrofit, and they went to do their research, and they got so confused with different opinions that they dropped their retrofit intentions and purchased the electric vehicle instead to express their environmental concerns. And of course, at the time of the retrofit, a coordinator, there isn't that much it can do. It can only work with that stage. However, obviously, there are things pre-retrofit that need to be there for coordinator to coordinate. And we are talking about, of course, maturity of energy retrofit market, construction and energy expertise, which I'm not going to be talking about, but homeowners' goals and expectations. And I am going to talk about this with some examples later. Okay. So what we have from this sub area, so there are difference between proximate and ultimate influences, and for reduction in energy use, the proximate influence provide information. The ultimate build homeowner capacity for retrofit, which I will talk about later. There is and the ultimate, and for level of retrofit depth, retrofit coordinator, and we have that in past 2035, both the provision and information and the retrofit coordinator. And ultimate influence for retrofit depths shape socio-technical realities prior to retrofit, including homeowner motivations, which I will talk about later. Now we talk about information sources and the diversity of information sources at different retrofit stages for different aspects of low carbon technology. Okay, what's the aspects of low carbon technology? There are 3 nested levels. Obviously, it's a product. There is a particular product, you go, buy a particular product from a particular manufacturer. But then there is a design option, which is a solution to a particular design problem. For instance, internal and external walls installation is 2 different design options for a problem of heat loss through fabric, and they can be obviously implemented with different products. Great. And from my interviews, it was, some of the homeowners knew what the design options are, but they had to find about the products because the products change. Your information 10 years ago is already dated. And this might actually mean that this searching for local product information is also tiresome. Maybe it could be coordinated for, for people, for it to be easier. But also there is technology, the level is technological system. It's various design options combined together in a system, which might be more effective to optimize its efficiency as a system as a whole, rather than optimizing each design option separately. For instance, an original idea for the passive house was, okay, to make it a system and make it, optimize it better, let's remove the heating system altogether because we're already introducing the ventilation system. So remove the heating system altogether and heat the, the air that is coming in. So kind of, as a whole, not optimizing each system, but integrating the system. And actually, in my interviews, it was obvious that, beside passive house, there is no source to look to understand these interdependencies, and people didn't know and they didn't understand the dependencies beforehand, and that's something that missing as the information. So those are 3 levels, and then we have they're here, and then we have our pre-retrofit, retrofit stage, and post-retrofit stage, and here it's dividing a little bit more based on Owen and Mitchell's 2015 paper. They did interviews, and based on different intermediaries that people were contacting at different stages, they show the existing of different stages. Option identification, you go to Google, you go to FAIR. Option formalization, which can include planning permission, tendering process, so again, different source of contact. Installation, for instance, in one of my interviews, there was a builder who didn't have expertise in sustainability construction, so an owner hired a consultant, sustainability consultant, who came to transfer his knowledge to the builder who was doing that. Commissioning, for instance, in passive house design, pressure tests, not always visible the conventional stage, but possible. Post-commissioning phases possible, and post-retrofit stage, for instance, in the Superhomes network, they all obtained the certificate and the calculations of how much they reduced. And for them, some of them, that was one of the reasons to do it, to see how much they have done. Another thing, there is a difference between a knowledge and persuasion. So you obtain an information and then you get, you hear there is difference between you've heard it and you got convinced it is. And actually there are different type of sources that might be needed for both. So a very generic outcome here is that you actually need to consider, are there appropriate information sources for each aspect of low carbon technology for each stage of the retrofit. And as I mentioned, it doesn't seem to be any appropriate generic information on technological systems in the early stages beside passive house design. Then there is a difference. One could see the difference between generic information and context-specific information, of course, specific to your context, but also difference between expert and non-expert sources. And it seems they are not cannot be substituted one by another. For instance, non-expert sources such as friends, neighbors, local community, open networks are those sources that you go and understand the general information in the context of local situation, but also it's something you trust, so you build that persuasion stage. So it seems like both are necessary, and therefore, there is a need to support these non-expert networks, for instance, as open home events. So what I have here is, at each stages of retrofit journey for all aspects of low carbon technology and expert and non-expert information. In the literature, I saw an example from Denmark written by Kristin Graham Hansen and her PhD student, I guess Vlasova. She is no longer in academia, so I guess that was her PhD. And they looked at the village in Denmark, and of course I don't know how it is in Denmark, I'm just citing you the paper, but the local authority there had a program, and they did energy audits for all that village. That was complemented with the real suggestion, like from a local builder. The community, local authority was also giving training for the local community, for the builders to build their skills. And eventually, one by one, they started doing this, and then looking at other neighbors who were doing it, discussing, and everything kind of started happening. So by the end of Vlasova's PhD, the little village was discussing how they could become a net zero village. So, but here I just want to point out that it was a proactive delivery of information regardless of where the homeowners were in their retrofit journey. So, they didn't think about it. It was just delivered to them, and they started thinking about it. And as I mentioned, support non-expert information channels such as open house events. And I'll take this opportunity to promote Oxford Open Home event happening soon. Okay. Now we talk about homeowner capacity to retrofit, and I just define it broadly as capacity to shape the retrofit intentions and transform them into successful retrofit solution and a reduction in energy used post-retrofit. So it's a bit complicated, too many words here, but I'll walk you through. So such capacity manifests in homeowners' knowledge regarding the installed technology, as well as homeowners' sense of pride and satisfaction with the retrofit outcomes. As one of my interviewers mentioned, it's a different sense of connection you build with your house through retrofit, which is of course true to any retrofit, not just low carbon retrofit. There are two processes contributing to such capacity building confidence that the chosen solution is right, and that it is installed correctly, and maintaining the balance between the retrofit experience and dynamic of a retrofit life. Here, for instance, I mean, it is a tedious process, and one of my interviews said, well, going like this, it would have broken a marriage or two. You know, it was so intense. But then she was very proud of the achievement, and it didn't break her marriage. So as you can see here, the notion of time emerges as an important dimension. It takes time to build confidence in retrofit solution. It takes, and time is needed to balance your experience, which is, again, a suggestion that the step-by-step retrofit might be a more viable option from a perspective of people's life as compared to in-depth one of retrofit. And here installed correctly, that's to do with, of course, trust in builders and things. So successful implication of successful capacity development, of course, a successful retrofit project to begin with, not buying a electric car instead. Homeowner knowledge on how to optimize their homes. Of course, they know how to operate their complicated technology. There was also a capacity to overlook suboptimal outcomes. So all of my interviewees, they had some suboptimal outcomes, whether there was a slight overheating, a slight low ventilation rate. Some of them installed them installed several heating technologies with overlapping functionality, retrospectively understanding that much was not needed. There was some drafts in another example, and but they were so proud with what they achieved that all of those was not important, didn't matter. And then, of course, they were involved in reduction of energy use post-retrofit, but also, most importantly, they were proud, and there is a positive word of mouth regarding retrofit process and outcomes that they were spreading to others through open home networks. So, as I mentioned, time is an important dimension, so suggestion for a serious consideration for step-by-step retrofit approach, even if it's not the most economically viable, it seems to be more viable for people. And building trust in chosen solutions. In cases I've seen, people who did it themselves obviously were more confident that the thing is right. I know that do-it-yourself retrofit is not supported by mainstream policy because of all the safety considerations, but maybe other mechanisms of building trust that I haven't seen. And then the final one, home meanings. Let's go through that. Okay, the idea here is such that different actors misinterpret the diversity of intentions behind homeowner retrofit decisions, and they actually pursue their own goals and motivations. And we know of instances where builders actually discouraged people to retrofit, saying, well, it's not a viable option, it's not economically viable option. Or from the literature I've seen, even if some builders were really like motivated on optimizing energy efficiency and disregarded other homeowner intentions behind their retrofit as in aesthetics and stuff like that. So it is a problem. So so I suggest we build a common frame of reference to understand the homeowner intentions for retrofit, for everybody to look at and see the diversity. Another thing is that we commonly use cognitive reasoning to understand homeowner retrofit intentions, and I'm saying, well, there is emotional reasoning as well, and home is a place of a great significance and meaning for individuals. So I went to the literature of meanings of homes to understand what home means to people, and to understand, in order to understand how benefits of low carbon dwelling could be turned into meaningful narratives for individuals. You see energy going through the pipe here. Okay. So that's the common frame of reference. So I told you that we currently use cognitive reasonings, which is like, you will save money, you will save climate, and there is health consideration to you. There is health benefits for you. And I'm saying there is more than that. There is emotional reasoning, and we should use the whole spectrum of reasoning to promote such benefits. So again, I went to the literature, I went to my interviews, and develop those concepts. So it's not just health and well-being, it's broader than that, it's being happy. So a home, a low carbon dwelling is an environment that it's easier to control, it's easier to tune in and stuff. And as such, it provides a platform to easily achieve something that we all strive in homes, being happy. Whatever that is, it's up to individual reading, on your own a book or entertaining guests, but it is the sense of happiness. This understanding opens us other channels to promote this idea. For instance, if you know the Danish concept of hygge, it is this happy image of, coziness. Can we attach this happy notion of comfort and coziness to low carbon dwellings, because it is a platform for you that you can easily achieve that. Then there is a climate concern. It's not just that, it's about your carrying identity. It's identity, it's pride, it's visual aesthetics, it's community connection. So, and there is of course all this literature on identity that then you can look into to think how to strengthen that identity. Maybe it should be visible, it should be encouraged. And then there is financial considerations. Not only that, it's resilience, it's future resilience. It's not just financial resilience, it's material resilience, it's political resilience, it's climate resilience. And of course, different aspects will resonate with different people. And of course, the categorization here is still quite broad, but I wanted it to be common frame of reference for people to think of the diversity. So I put it in one, line, home for the common future, and the cheesy part here comes that it's, So, and the idea was always like, so in the UK we have Elizabethan home, we have Edwardian home. Can we have HCFs? Maybe. And some examples, for instance, like emotional reasoning, images, happy images. So people carrying their day-to-day life, like elderly ladies, despite the poor weather outside because there is no drafts next to the window and stuff like that. Can we, make this association happening? Or can we tap into people's identity and pride? I mean, there is a couple explaining to another couple how their, solar panels, what they're generating today and what is happening, right? Can we promote it, encourage it? It's your identity. So a common friend of references, the insight, home for the common future, HCF, and both cognitive and emotional reasoning. And those the insights from a glance. So retrofit is a process, proximal and ultimate influences, information sources, at each stage of retrofit journey for each aspect of retrofit technology, product design option, technological system, capacity for retrofit. Time is an important aspect of capacity building, and home meanings, home for the common future, frame of reference. And thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Yekatherina. I wonder if you touched on some of the reasons people like electric vehicles, because maybe you feel quite smug. So S, I don't know what the other letters will be, but again,
I mean,
it's about
part of
making
identity, yes.
Yeah, so it makes people do something that's easy, but also they feel they're doing the right thing.
Yes.
So, any questions in the audience?
There seems to be a question.
So we'll also take some from online, but if we take the one from the first, if you wouldn't mind speaking up a little, and maybe the microphone can hear you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, especially in the emotional aspect, the emotions that you presented were very, very positive and forward-looking. I was wondering if there was, especially in the cohort of owners you have, and the cases you've looked at, has there been a role that, say, necessity or vulnerability of their sort of, building sort of block, has that pushed that, and does that come through in the emotional aspect as well? This is positive, and I mean, so it's very optimistic, yes, but I was also wondering if there are some negative motivations.
This is indeed correct. I mean, again, this is for promotion, obviously, but of course, experiences at one homes can be positive and negative. A person should and hopefully should feel a sense of belonging to one's home, but it can be a sense of marginalization and things. And of course, there should be also negative associations with low carbon dwelling. For instance, some of my interviewees, when they were talking something, let's say, about identity, they were saying, "Oh, it's sterile, it's passive house and stuff like that." Some negative connotations. We should change that as well. One thing I did to control for that in my case studies, I ask people associations, give me all associations that come in your mind with the word home, and those were happy things, joy and love and things. If I were to see something like oppression and stuff, I would not consider that case, because obviously there is more happening there. But that's aspirational. But indeed, we need to think about how also reduce how the negative impressions were built and how to reduce these negative impressions.
Sorry,
Please, yeah.
I have a question. I'm involved in forming a business looking at supplying rooftop solar to consumer systems in the UK. And this issue of trust is a major, major issue, particularly in this market where there have been some bad practices over the years, selling scams and all sorts of things. I wondered if you thought, can a business be a source of trusted information, or do you think that's inherently different? And if a business can be a source of trusted information, the advice that you have, I guess a sub-question would be, is the digitalization of the information potentially a way to build trust in information?
Yeah, so I must admit that people who retrofitted in my sample, who retrofitted to a great depth, acquired immense amount of knowledge. They were the ones themselves to make judgment of what is happening, to an extent that sometimes overruling builders' decisions, saying, no, we are doing this. So, and as I said in my sample, do it yourself was the way to build trust. So I can't speak from the sample I've seen, but a colleague of mine was talking about a company that, so about digitalization, a company that is installing boilers, and it's a recent company, like 5 years old, and it became like #1 company. And indeed, those rankings on Google, on, you know, ranking the quality of it and stuff like that, that helps. So I do hope that there are other ways to build trust in that connection than just, you know, do it yourself. But unfortunately, I can't tell you what those mechanisms are, because was not visible in my research.
Chris, just before I come to you, can I just take one of the online questions? Nick Rimmer is just asking if there are any good examples of training or education for builders so that they can be more aware of best practice.
I guess my colleague Gavin would be the best to answer that questions, who is researching on skills and training.
Maybe watch the recording from the seminar earlier in the year for that one. Okay, so we'll just pass to Chris Church a second as well, Chris.
Well, thank you. It was really interesting, and I like the idea, the idea of the journey. But we kind of tended to look in terms of people moving from awareness to alignment, and from alignment to actual engagement and then action. And I think here the alignment is probably when someone actually signs something and commit. And at that, after that point, they're probably likely to be getting professional advice or expert advice. But in the run up to that stage, it's much more likely, I would have thought, to be non-expert, partly because people haven't committed, maybe a bit suspicious of experts trying to sell them stuff, as the gentleman here said. So is there an issue here? We need to put more support into the non-expert advice, because clearly we aren't getting the numbers to a retrofit that we need.
Yeah, but I was saying that we need to support non-expert sources.
So how, okay, have you got, how would you do that? I mean,
Well, I mean, the obvious one is open house events where people could go and talk to others how it works and stuff. That seemed to work.
I suppose I was thinking more of who the non-expert people are going to. It may be environmental groups or people running that, but it might easily be other people in their community.
Absolutely.
It seems like we aren't necessarily doing a very good job of it, judging by the levels of uptake.
Absolutely. I had, so besides open home events, I don't have anything to tell you from my sample, but I had an idea that, for instance, you know, doing retrofit together, like 3, 4, 5 houses together, and spreading the information burden. So it's not necessarily that it will make it cheaper, but the burden to get through the information, understand the information, get all the quotes and stuff like that is so high that maybe, you know, if you do refer to a local authority, council, and they're like, oh, there are other 3, 4 people that are going through it right now, and you can, you know, communicate like this, maybe that would, and which is informal. But that was just my idea I made up.
One little subsidiary question. Sorry, Dr. For your 6 points, you had emotional and cognitive right at the end.
Yeah.
And I suppose my slightly flippant question is the experts are probably good at advising on the top right, financial considerations. Yeah. Some of them may understand climate concerns. But I'd love to see a builder who could talk to us about caring and happiness. The Hugo.
The
How
Hugo.
do you train builders to encourage people to think about Hugo?
Maybe this is a holistic builder, so they take everything into account, not just the fabric.
I don't know how to do that. That's for future research.
I think it's an interesting kind of, you know, we need to get that.
We need to get that. So I started with a common frame of reference, but then of course, that how does it practically get implemented? Would love to see that happening. My research stopped here.
I've got another online question before I come to Nick, because we got the next year. This is Nick Jelly. I won't bother to ask you to turn your camera on, Nick, but Nick's asking, should people try to baseline before they start retrofit to see what are they using already, possibly using smart meters? So is there enough understanding of how energy is being used before retrofit journey starts?
Any kind of yardstick is, I think, is valuable for people also to understand how much they achieved, to understand where they stand, and also as the result to, you know, to see, yeah, what has been achieved. Yeah, so it is valuable for emotional reasons as well.
Oh, that's interesting. And just before we come to you, Nick, you talked about energy performance certificates, which of course is a guide to what the property might be expected to do under some ideal conditions, but it isn't a reflection as to how people use the property.
Yeah.
So again, to what extent do people understand it's their use of the technology and the facilities in the building rather than what's been done to it?
Yeah, so, you know, I'm in that, you know, energy use in building, okay, you have the physical structure and technology, but of course, there is a household involvement in that. And yes, you can provide the information, but that's not enough. The people need to be engaged. I looked at homeowner retrofits for people who actually did retrofit themselves, and going through the journey and owning that project and getting a sense of pride help them to maintain the journey. Of course, that creates a question, what about people moving from home to home, you know, who was not involved? I don't know, but maybe a house that has some identity, like place identity, like a passive house. I've never lived in one, but surely if I go to a passive house, never lived in one, I would expect it to be a passive house, you know, so I will. So maybe against the literature on place identity and how that can be promoted and that can shape people's practices, if that answered to anything.
Thank you. Nick, can we turn to you now? Is that okay?
Yeah, thanks, Yekatherina. Very interesting. I guess that your sample, your interviewees are people who have either done a retrofit or at least thought about it, even if they ended up buying an electric car instead of doing one. And as Chris pointed out, I mean, actually, in many ways, the problem is that the rest of the world. So you've got data on early movers. Is there any sense? I mean, it's probably an unfair question, but what can we learn from that data for the not early movers?
Well,
I mean, are they likely to be different in some attributes? I just wondered if there was enough granularity across your sample from maybe the sort of super keen to people who sort of only just got over the line, help us learn what the next set of movers want to need.
yeah, so thank you for the question. Yeah, I've mentioned an example from Denmark, a proactive delivery of information before people considering it seems to be important, you know, for the forming homeowner goals and expectations before they actually consider it. And that is my suggestion for, you know, next movers, that this homeowners goals and expectations and, you know, understanding of technology and what it is and their attitude to it is not something that, it's something that needs to build over time before they think about it. Otherwise, their pre-existing conceptions will dominate what is happening during the retrofit. For instance, again, in the literature, some people decided not to do vapor barrier because they didn't want to live in a plastic bag. and this not something you can change in one discussion. It's a longer process of consideration. So my suggestion, I'm stressing out that it's not only we need to mature the market for the retrofit and build the skills in the construction industry. We need to be proactively preparing homeowners for when they will be starting those journeys.
So Gavin went here, I know what he'd say, so how are we going to build the maturity of the energy retrofit market and construction industry expertise if there's not enough work going? How do we break out of what is currently
well, yeah, again, that one example from Denmark seems to be that it needs to be local and needs to be all at once, coordinated well. So that particular scheme, you know, they delivered energy audience to homeowners with real suggestions from the local industry. They trained local industry. They provided energy coordinator at the same time, and that seemed to be, and of course they were also very much involved, and that seemed to be to work on that local level. There are many things that need to happen at the same time. Possibly the local level is easier to do that, and that would be my only.
Maybe just to chip in, I mean, I would say right now the pricing environment is very much starting the market. I mean, you know, installation partners we're speaking with say that the market in solar is now as hot as it was in feed-in tariff days. So the pricing increase. I mean, you have that down as a cognitive factor, but it's important.
It is important. I mean, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that let's use all the reasoning out there.
I'll just take one more question online for a second. Daniel is just asking online, have you looked at the opportunities to take under-occupied properties so that now the conversion process gives you more dwellings and an energy efficiency improvement at the same time? Is that something you've explored?
I didn't understand.
So in other words, you might have a large house and not all of the rooms are being used in that house. Is there an opportunity for the retrofit process to turn it into more than one dwelling unit at the same time as improving the energy?
I have not seen it in my cases.
Okay. Thank you. Have another question in the audience?
I was just thinking, when you talked about homeowner motivation, it's homeowner as inhabitants.
Yeah, or home owner occupiers. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to sort of renting and people do that,
It's a different situation, and I didn't explore it, thinking that must be another complication on top. So let's start with this level first. I did not explore renting.
I guess, unfortunately, in England, at least, the proportion of people in private rented is increasing. And
yes,
in places like
important,
Oxford, probably 50% of people live in a private rented accommodation.
So the government's willingness to regulate is bigger in that sense. So
in which sector? Homeowner.
the rented sector.
The renter sector.
Okay, any more questions, or should we? Tina?
So I was just talking to somebody who's looking at doing some work for a local government association, and they want to commission some behaviour change, information intervention in retrofit, and they want to do it quite quickly. You just think, oh, you know, that's not going to work. But then I was thinking about your, you know, this kind of idea about the non-expert sources of information being important, that you can't just not have those in the sort of open homes, and that seems like maybe that would be a, you know, we know that. I mean, were there any other sort of, apart from that, were there other sort of more organised forms of local level sort of information provision, knowledge sharing that was somehow informal?
I mean, online platforms, yeah. So it's, people forums, definitely something like this. So yeah, with reviews, so those seem to be getting prominence. If it is a good platform where basically when people go to open homes, they want to see what it is and ask, can you recommend me somebody?
Yes, indeed.
And if there is a platform for doing that among homeowners, like not just somebody selling you something, but you know, might be a very valuable thing.
Yeah, because having taken part in, well, going as a visitor, but also opening our home, I mean, that experiential thing about seeing a home, whether that matters that it's non-commercial, I don't know, but it's certainly seeing it in real life and speaking to real people.
Yes. But it's also, yeah, I mean, you'd expect that this homeowner does not have bias and will tell you, oh, that didn't work, it worked, you know, we thought it's gonna, you know, have enough ventilation, it doesn't, or something like this. So the experience.
And did you see anything? Was there anything particular that anybody mentioned about local authority or services or information?
So that was reoccurring. So people did turn to local authorities as the first instance for information, not to find any. Like, so it does seem that it's a natural. For instance, on any medical stuff, the first thing I Google is NHS. You know,
Yeah.
So the people did go to local authorities also thinking that they will find generic information, but also specific to their area, not to find any, but they want to. It's the first. So maybe such some level of generic information, not product specific information, but generic information should be there, definitely on technological systems and interdependencies.
Okay, I think with that, we'll thank Yekatherina once again for her talk this evening. So, as I've said already, that's the last of the seminars for this series, and we'll be coming back bright and fresh in the new term. Don't forget, tomorrow evening, Oxford Friends of the Earth, Nick will be talking there, Chris Church, organiser in the audience. Then we have Green Open Homes is the website to go to look at the Oxford Energy Saving Homes opening from the 18th to the 29th of June. And also on the 26th of June, which is a Sunday, the Energy Saving Fair at the Oxford Town Hall, all of which is free and ties in very much with the early exploration part of this journey we've heard about this evening. In the meantime, please recommend to colleagues who haven't signed up to join the Oxford Energy Network mailing list. Obviously, those of you who joined us this evening found out a bit one way or another, but let's just spread the word. And hope you all have a very good evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.